It's day 3 of our second week in the Food Freedom Challenge. And it's an exciting day because some of you may be hearing different things when you're pausing and noticing what's coming up for you when you're making those food choices. And we're going to talk about that in just a minute. But before we get into it, I just want to make a few housekeeping notes just to remind everyone that we love, love, love hearing from you, but we want to do so safely from your pulled over car, hopefully your home or in your office. So for those of you who may be driving, please pull over before you raise your hand. And when it comes to raising your hand, please raise your electronic hand. You can find that button right down in the reactions tab at the bottom of your screen. And also, if you could change your name to your given name, because we want to know who we're talking to instead of seeing something like iPhone 365, we want to know your name. So please, if you could do those for me, that would be wonderful. And also, you guys have been incredible in asking lots of questions and sharing your awarenesses, and that's been great to hear. If you haven't been doing that live, I encourage you to step out of your comfort zone just a little bit and raise your hand today and join those brave souls who've been able to talk on camera. It's a lot of fun. And if you can turn your camera on, that would be great. I know sometimes you're in a certain environment where you can't do that. That's okay. But if you can, please join us on camera because that's so much fun. So wonderful to see where all of you are from. Boston, that's not far from me. I'm from Newport, New York, so I'm in a very little town. And my name is Lori Moody, by the way, for those of you who don't know me. I've been with WildFit for the past, oh gosh, 5 years now. It's been incredible. So I am just so excited to work with you guys on this new program. It's so, so much fun. Raise your hand if you've been absolutely loving it so far. Right? Yes, it's incredible. We do things so much differently, and that has been a game changer for me and so many of my clients. So I can't wait to see where you end up in your journey. So let's get into it. Okay. Now, look, these last 10 days, you've been doing a lot of psychological work, right? And you might be like, okay, when are we going to get to the food stuff? But I want to remind you that this is the foundation that we're working on. This, what we've been doing for the past 10 days, this is what's going to make the changes stick, right? You've been uncovering some deep rooted patterns, lots of habits that you've had, right? Your internal food dialogue, your habits, your food rules, your beliefs about food, some deep emotional connections, right? We're going to talk a lot about that today. Let me tell you though, having the awareness about these connections is huge. It's huge, right? It's kind of like when you take your car to the garage because something isn't working right? The mechanic needs to hear what's not working properly. They need to know how it's not working in order to remedy the problem for you, right? So they need to recreate it. That's kind of what we're doing. And I grew up with mechanics all around, so I have lots of car analogies. But that's what we need to do. We need to hear that internal dialogue so we can figure out where do we go astray or where do we kind of lose our focus? And without that, we can't change anything. So I'm so glad that you're here doing this with me. Now, raise your hand. I want to see everybody in the chat. Raise your hand. Well, not in the chat, but live on camera. You can just do one of these things. If you have been noticing this week that you've actually started to stop in your tracks when getting food to kind of listen for the dialogue. I know it probably at the beginning of the week sounded a little strange, but raise your hand if you've actually stopped in your tracks. Okay, awesome. Oh, I love that. Zoom's got its own little things. We put our hands up and all these little pop noises up here. That's amazing. That is so, so good, you guys. You are on your way to making lasting transformation. I want to tell you a little story about how I was when I was in your shoes right about now. Right now in the program, I was noticing that I had a lot of conditioning and food patterns, just as you guys probably have. I remember growing up, I lived right next door to my Italian grandparents. And every weekend, every Sunday, and some of you could probably relate to this, I had my cousins, my aunts, my uncles, everybody was over for dinner on Sunday. Sunday actually started out with my grandfather bringing us to the local bakery and we would get our favorite donuts. It was the best experience ever, right? Because you know how grandparents are, they spoil us. And then later in the day, when everybody came over, it was all about the food. You know, we all had our roles. My job was to grate the Parmesan cheese. Okay. I think I bit more off than I actually grated, but that's a story for another day. But we all had our roles, and it was amazing sitting at the table with my cousins and my aunts and uncles and my parents, my brother and my sister. We had so much fun that day. But you know what else? The day before on Saturday, because I lived right next to my grandparents, I got to sleep over and spend the night. And what we did is we got to be involved in making the meatballs the night before because my grandfather always made them the night before and the sauce. And then we also had, sleepovers where my brother and sister and I would fight for the favorite spot on the sofa. We'd stay up late at night and we'd watch HBO because my parents didn't have HBO. So we were watching movies that we probably shouldn't have been at a younger age. Did anybody else do that? Or was that just me? Always been a little bit of a rebel. But it was so much fun. We loved spending the night at our grandparents' house. And as I became a parent and then later a grandparent, I wanted to create these experiences for my children and my grandchildren as well. And so when I was in this part of the challenge, this is where I realized, you know what? It wasn't about the food. Because I started to think, I want that Sunday tradition. I want to make the pasta and the meatballs with my kids. But I realized it wasn't about the food. It really wasn't. It was about the sense of family and community and connection and love and comfort and security, right? Like, oh, such an amazing, amazing awareness. And so now I have different traditions with my children. Some of them don't have anything to do with food. And the most beautiful thing happened. My kids started doing them with their kids, the same tradition that I created. So bringing up that awareness of your childhood can be so powerful. Another thing that came up for me when I was in week 2 was that I remembered being sick. I remember staying home from school. I remember my mom taking such good care of me. She would give me chicken noodle soup, right? As we all have had. And she'd always give me saltine crackers. Who else had the saltine crackers with their chicken noodle soup? Yes, right? And as I grew up to be an adult, I found myself always having saltine crackers, or if those weren't available, like the little oyster crackers with my chicken noodle soup. And I got to a point where I wouldn't even have chicken noodle soup if I didn't have crackers. I was like, oh my gosh. So when I got to this part, I was like, oh, that is a food rule for me. Why is it so strong that I can't have chicken noodle soup without crackers? And then I realized that because it made me feel like I was being taken care of. It brought me back to that security that my mom was taking care of me when I was sick. It kind of goes back to that story that Eric tells about the little boy who falls and scrapes his knee, right? And gets a cookie to make him feel better. So that was a pattern that I saw repeated over and over and over again. And even though I knew that I didn't want to eat a lot of bread or processed foods like that, it was still a challenge for me to eat chicken noodle soup without a cracker for a while. So that was something that was another sign for me. And then one other quick story I'll share with you, because some of you may be able to relate to this one as well, is I, as an adult, was a long time binger. I would binge on things. I wouldn't buy things and bring them in my home, but when I was around them, I couldn't stop eating them. And I finally figured out why, or at least the very beginning of that habit was when I would go to friends' houses because my mom and dad didn't buy a lot of snacks. And to be honest with you, I'm not sure if it was a financial reason or maybe my mom knew that it probably wasn't a healthy thing to have in the house, but we didn't have a lot of snacks. We'd have a few, but we'd have to save them for school, right? To put in our lunch pail. And so when I was at my friend's house and their parents would bring out these snacks, I would go hog wild, like I'd never had one before. And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, why am I eating so many of these?" And I thought, I wonder, it could have been because I don't get them at home. Like Twinkies. I know the people in the US probably know what I'm talking about with Twinkies, right? Who's had a Twinkie? Like when I was younger, that was amazing. And Ho-Hos, right? I can remember eating so many of them. And I thought, oh my God, then I would feel bad because I was at my friend's house. But I think that was the start of me binging. And I realized at this point in the program that I was going through a lack state of mind where I was feeling like I might not ever get this opportunity again, which is silly because, of course, I could, right? I'm a grown adult. I could buy whatever I wanted. But I was, yes, Stu, you would eat Ho-Hos by the box. Yeah, I 100% can relate. But, that was the start of me eating things and binging on them and then not buying them for myself. But when they were around, I would binge. So I recognize that as like maybe I'm being too strict with myself, right? Maybe I'm being too strict with myself. Maybe I need to loosen the reins a little bit or buy myself something. Maybe not Ho-Hos and Twinkies, but maybe I should splurge in some other way. Margaret, what are these things called? Ho-Hos? Oh, Google them. They're these chocolate cakes with white cream in the center, and then they're rolled kind of like a pumpkin roll, but they come in like a log. Oh, terrible for us, but I loved them at the time, right? So this is the big shift. This is the big shift because now we're realizing that we're having certain things because of an emotional connection. Right now, you're becoming more aware of all these things, and you might still be eating them emotionally, and that's okay. Right? That's okay. But you're going to start noticing, if you haven't already, that something is a little different this time. Right? Can you all agree something's a little different? Before, when you were eating these things, remember you had that rush of hormones that made it taste even more amazing than it actually was. But now that those hormones are slowing down because, right, we've given you permission to eat them with awareness, of course, you're starting to notice that they don't taste as magical as you once thought. Okay. Twinkies, Ho-Hos, right? They're not as magical as you once thought. Now, who here, raise your hand, who here has ate something and you're thinking, this doesn't quite hit the same way as it used to? Who's been noticing that so far? Yeah, very, very cool. Oh, I love this new feature from Zoom. Every time you guys raise your hand, I hear little pop, pop, pops. It reminds me of VH1 when they had the pop-up trivia, if anyone remembers that. Such a fun little sound. Anyway, I'm glad that you're realizing that because that's super, super important. Now, I want you to zoom out a little bit. Okay, I want you to think about something. Why do those foods, whatever it is for you, right? It could be something totally different than what it is for me. Why do they have such a hold on us? It's not just our memories, right? It's there by design. And I know that Eric has spoken about this before, but it's so, so true. Have you ever looked at the ingredients list? Now, I know some of you have. I know some of you had because you're here for a deeper dive, and I think that's amazing. But for those of you who are here for the very first time, have you ever looked at a food ingredient list? Now, I'm not talking about the food nutritional label with the calories because, we're not about counting calories here. But I know that that's something I've done many, many times. I'm talking about that itty bitty little tiny words, but sometimes it's really long, but they're so small, the ingredient list. Yeah. I want you to start paying attention to that. And I want you to know that the food industry has put things in the ingredients list by design to keep us addicted. Have you noticed how much has snuck in there other than what you thought was in there? Right? I want to show you guys something real quick. Now, my daughters have done a fabulous job at trying to find healthy food sources for their children. And I'm on the hunt for that as well, because now that I don't have grown children of my own in the house, it's just my husband and I. We don't buy a lot of this stuff, but occasionally I want to buy some to keep them for when my grandkids come over. And there's a few things that I want you guys to notice that I've noticed. So here's something for an example. Can everybody see this? This is fruit flavored snacks. They're like little gummies. And it has a big green banner on the top, if you notice. And in big letters, it says organic, right? Like immediately, don't you think this looks healthy? There's trees here, like see the trees? The green color, the brand is called Simply Nature, right? Organic, it's got to be good. It even has the USDA label. Where is it? Oh, right here. It even has the USDA label. It's got to be good, right? I want you to look at the ingredients list, not the nutritional label, but down near the ingredients list. And I got to put my cheaters on, guys, for this. But the first ingredient is organic rice syrup. Now, you guys all know, right? You know that the first ingredient means that it has the highest quantity, right? They're listed in order of the quantity. So the very first ingredient is the one that it contains the most of. Organic rice syrup. Do you know why they use organic rice syrup? They use it to sweeten it. It's a sweetener. It's syrup. It's the first freaking ingredient. And then you know what the next one is? Organic cane sugar. Sure, it's organic, but it's cane sugar. So the first two ingredients are sugar. And then there's pectin, citric acid, ascorbic acid, vitamin C, natural flavors. Oh, we're going to talk so much about natural flavors coming up. And they do have some decent things in there. I'm not going to lie. They have organic juice of carrot, apple, and black currant, but it's got a lot of unhealthy stuff. And the first two ingredients are pure sugar. So this is just a sugar bomb for our kids, disguised as something super, super healthy. Okay, so we have to be vigilant. We can't just assume that what we see on the top is an honest representation of what the food is, because it's not. And here's another quick one. Okay, I'm a fitness instructor, so former, I don't teach anymore, but fitness instructor at heart always, but fit and active. So this cereal called Vitality cereal, it sounds amazing, made by Fit and Active. Again, the green label, right? Please, please, please don't assume that the front of the package or even the back of the package is going to tell you everything you need to know. Please go to the food ingredient list. On this one, just real quickly, the first ingredient is rice. Then it's followed by whole grain wheat. Sounds pretty good, right? Third ingredient is sugar. Okay, third ingredient. And then like the fifth and sixth and seventh ingredients are just other forms of sugar. There doesn't need to be sugar in here at all, right? They just do that by design so that we will be hooked on their food and buy more and more. Okay, so I want you guys to go out there and explore your local grocery store. Give yourself an extra 15 minutes and start looking at the ingredient list. Okay, part of this is why I went to Battle Creek, Michigan. In the fall last year, I went there with a group of people to see if we could talk to Kellogg's, the headquarters of one of the most biggest breakfast cereal companies. And we went there to ask them, why do you put cleaner ingredients in our foods for other countries, but for your own citizens, you are still keeping some crappy ingredients that are known to be harmful to our health? And they didn't even talk to us. In fact, they told us, go away, get off their lawn. So they don't want to help. They really don't care about us. They don't want us to think for ourselves. But that's exactly what we're doing, guys. We are thinking for ourselves. We are making decisions. We're noticing what they're doing, what they're not doing. And that alone is so, so powerful. And I want to talk a little bit about power too, while we're on the subject, right? We talk a lot about willpower. And some of you might be using just a little bit of willpower right now. Some of you might be still relying on that old strategy, that old mechanism. I get it. I totally get it. It's so hard. It's been ingrained in us, right? Especially for those of you who might be the same age as me. I'm 54 and I grew up in the age where thin was popular. And I've been dieting since I was a teenager, right? And so that part of us, that strategy is so, so ingrained in us. And I know that it takes a little bit of effort and time to know how to turn that off. So that's okay. But I want to let you know that we are going to get rid of that willpower, right? We're only going to need it when we need it, right? And use it for what it's actually meant for. But it shows up in all aspects of our lives. It comes up a lot. And I could tell you as a fitness instructor, I saw it in the exercise industry as well. So many times did I see willpower, especially in January. For those of you who go to the gym, tell me in the chat, what's it like in January when you're trying to get on a treadmill or use the dumbbells? You can't. Right? It's crowded. There's so many people in there that you never even see on a regular basis. Right, Nicole? It's packed. It is packed with people. And I want to give you this other reason that it doesn't work. You know why? I've seen it because those people that are there in January, they're not there by mid-February. And by March, it's just the regulars. It was just me and my regulars. By the time March came around, all of those people had gone. And you know why they had gone? Because they were burnt out, or they got injured, or they started to resent exercise because they thought, oh, it didn't work. I went every single day for an entire week and it didn't work. Right? Joanne, you work at home now? Awesome. That's awesome. You can play whatever music you want. But this is exactly why we don't want to rely on willpower. That go big or go home mentality, that push through no matter what, that doesn't always work, right? There's a time and a place for that in the exercise world, but it doesn't really work. So by simply observing and noticing what you're eating, what's coming up for you, you are going to create lasting change for yourself. I'm curious, for those of you who have tried this before, what happens when you try to use willpower and then you end up having something that you were trying not to have? How many of you had kind of more than you would have had if you just gave yourself the permission to have it? How many people like ate way more, right? Yes, I did that too. It's like, oh my gosh, if I just gave myself the piece of cake, right? How many times do we go and have half of a piece of cake, but then we go back for the other half anyway, and then we go back for a second piece of cake, right? It happens. But this time we're doing things differently. No cake, but extra glass of wine. Yeah, we could see how this happens with other things, right? Right? So let's do things differently, right? Let's not force ourselves. Let's not struggle. Let's just do it and see food and drinks for what they really are, right? So right now, as you're eating those foods that you've always eaten, you might be noticing some things. They taste a little different, right? Eric predicted today would be the day that you're going to side with the angel because now you don't want to eat it because you're starting to notice. But we still have to side with that angel. We still need to continue this week to eat those things, even though you're starting to learn that it doesn't actually taste that good, right? Maybe you're recognizing a craving for what it really is, right? Like maybe just a habit, a memory, a moment of boredom. Anybody have those moment of boredoms or not actually hunger, right? Think about those food personalities. I want to add one more. I'm going to add one more. So Eric, if you're watching this replay, I'm adding one more personality, and that's the shapeshifter. Now, I've watched Moana with my granddaughter many, many times, and Maui, he's a shapeshifter. He turns into all kinds of characters. It's a lot of fun. And I've noticed that my food devil's a shapeshifter too. We've been talking a lot about that inner voice, our inner voice, our food devil, that part of us that wants something. the one that whispers, just one more bite. Oh, come on. You can do it. You're going to exercise it off tomorrow. I heard that so many times, right? You've been good. You deserve this. But the devil, that part of us, it's not always us. It's sometimes people around us. And Eric spoke about this today in the video. It's people that we know. I've experienced it this summer. And some of these friends that I was with, they've known me for a long time. I've always been the health kook out of the group, right? And they've known me for so long, but they still, my food devil still shape shifted into my best friend. Okay. We were together over the summer, a whole group of us. And she insisted that her husband drive her van because she has a van. So she's like the driver of every time we go with a group of friends. She insisted that her husband come with us this one time so that I could have a good time because I'm usually the DD. And I said, no. I said, no, that's okay. I don't need to drink. I'm going to drive home if you can't. It's okay. She insisted that he drive us because she assumed that for me to have fun, I needed to drink. But the thing is that I don't tie alcohol to my sense of having fun. And then it hit me. Sometimes this happens with food too, right? Sometimes there's that pressure to eat a certain thing, right? It doesn't always come from within. It sometimes comes from other people who may consciously or unconsciously know what they're doing, but they put their own beliefs onto us, right? It's the food, it's the friend who gives you the food that says, come on, just a little bit won't hurt, right? It's the family member who says, but this is your favorite dish. This is your favorite dish. Or it's the coworker that says, how come you're not eating this at the office party? Right? So that food devil shapeshifts, showing up in all different ways. And if we're not aware of it, we might end up making those choices that aren't actually our choices. It's our people around us. It's their choices that they project onto us. So when you do eat these things, you want it to be because you decided to eat it, not because, someone else in the world told you that's the way it should be. Right? I'm curious, who's had a moment where you've said no to someone, but it made them feel uncomfortable? Put in the chat if that's been you. Let me know who's that person. Last night, Ronald, Nicole, happens all the time. Lots of times. Yeah, I had another incident where another friend of mine who eats similarly as I do, we were talking about all the amazing things we found when vacationing together at this local grocery store. And our third friend, I could tell she got a little defensive because she said something along the lines of, well, I'm on vacation and I'm just going to eat what the locals eat. I don't care. Ooh, I could feel her defense. I could just feel it in my bones. I was like, ooh, we struck a nerve. We didn't mean to. We were just really excited about all the good things we were finding at the grocery store. Not to mention it had a jamming playlist on this intercom system. Who's got a grocery store that plays some amazing music, just dancing down the aisles? It makes it even better, right? Yes. We were in Whole Foods in Miami, Florida, to be exact. But yeah, it's interesting, right? How we make changes can really trigger those people around us. So something to think about. We're not here, obviously, to make them feel bad. We're here for ourselves. But we do need to be cautious of those people because they can sometimes hold us back if we let them. All right. How about we go into some check-ins? How's everybody feeling? You guys want to share what's going on for you? I want to know, what are you feeling? What childhood memories do you have?
All right, we're going to start with Jan.
Hey, Jan. There you go.
Hi, Laurie. Nice to see you again.
Hello. Nice to see you.
I still don't believe you're old enough to have grandchildren. It's look amazing.
Thank you.
It's been because I was born with many allergies and many massive reactions. What I'm tackling this time is lots of things I have ultra control over. Like, yes, I can have chocolate. Well, I can manage 3 pieces, and that's the limit. And I can manage that without, and so I've taken that to task, and I'm accepting the reactions that I'm having and monitoring them, because I want to know why. And the thing that I've always, despite that I gave up coffee at 18, I loved coffee all my life. And to this day, the smell of coffee. And I had a great breakthrough on the call with Harry just last week. And I went, oh, Harry, I know what it is. My dad was a tea drinker, and he was up at 4 o'clock in the morning to go to the fruit and veg market, ready to bring back to the shop with the flowers and everything else. Or sometimes I'd go with him because I'd be wheezing, sneezing. And it was they had this yellow ceramic percolator on a Sunday morning. It would go plip, 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 plip. We're talking nearly 60 years ago, and I remembered that. And so coffee, and it's the smell of coffee. And I said, even though I don't have coffee, and maybe if I've been really good with my diet, and I mean good in my way, with the things that I can't eat before an event and after, I can get away with pushing my boundaries a bit and try one, and have a Swiss water decaffeinated one or something like that, and think, oh, but it's the smell. And I realized it was about slowing down time, because that was the morning my dad had time, and he wasn't rushing to work all hours, God sent, and it was time. And I realized it was really quite an emotional thing. So I thought my other thing is chocolate, which I can't eat lots of without massive reactions and do. So chocolate is a very much a control thing. And I'll often have a bar of plain chocolate with no soy lecithin and nothing, I'm very specific about what I have. And then I go, oh, that will be. So this afternoon, I thought I need to find what chocolate's about, because I really don't understand it. And I've looked at my devils, and I have the picator and the drug dealer of really mine that says, I've earned this. I've worked so hard. I need this, or just one little bit won't hurt. And then you think, oh, 2 chocolates would have been enough. I'll push it 3 chocolates. Oh, that was too far, that. So I thought, chocolate, I've got to do it. And it's milk chocolate I have to do, because I love plain chocolate. And I thought, it's milk chocolate I have to do, because I have to see what happens. So this afternoon I went and got a fair trade bar of chocolate, with no soy lecithin, with no other things in it, apart from some roasted hazelnuts. And I sat and ate it, and I was eating it and enjoying it. And I said, right, I thought, I've got to eat the whole bar, because nothing's happening so far. This is okay. This is lovely. I'm not. And then I suddenly got 2/3 of the way through the bar, and I went, oh, it's Christmas, that well-celebrated chocolate festival that we have. And I realized that when I was a child, we had a stocking, and what we had would we have a tangerine. We'd have an annual, like, it's a thick book, and it was an annual. It was like the Beano annual, or some comic annual, that was hardback annual that you had in your stocking, and you had a selection box. And that selection box in the UK was bars of chocolate in it, all done up in festive. Like you can see dog stockings done these days, but it was a box with bars of chocolate in it. And I realized that's where the chocolate, and I thought, why do I still crave chocolate when I can only eat 3 pieces? So I use willpower to stop myself. And I thought, I have to try. So I'm sat with my feet on a grounding mat now to try and negate some of the things. I've taken some homeopathic remedies, and I've had blinding earache, and it's only 2.5 hours since I ate the chocolate. I've got blinding earache. I've not got the sneezing and the wheezing, which is good, because I've been very careful about organic chocolate and no extra naughty things in it, so it's just chocolate. It is cocoa, and because I don't touch any of the other things on the make me coconut oil or anything. But I'm so surprised. I had to keep eating it and just savouring it until I got to the point where I went, oh, it's Christmas. Because the rebel in me came out, because it was such a controlled environment that I grew up in. On Christmas morning, my mother was making everything right for all the family. There's a big family coming over, and all just in the evening and everything else, and everybody else, I've got to do this, I've got to do this. You had to do jobs to do, and I could eat what I wanted. Nobody could tell me when I could eat it and what I could do. And I suddenly realised that the chocolate is the rebel in me that goes, oh, swear, now I'm going to eat that chocolate anyway and suffer the consequences. So I'm really glad that I found this. I'm not sure I'm going to sleep tonight, because I'm not used to this sugar, because my diet is always for the 40 odd years full of unprocessed food, and I have enough reactions from plants and everything else, you know. So, but I wanted to know why chocolate and coffee. Why to this day, after all these years, I still crave them. So I've done it, but I had to keep eating it till I finally got like, oh, Christmas. So that's me.
Wow. Jan, thank you so, so very much for sharing that. Because how many other people have done this with chocolate before? Yeah, I'm seeing the hands go up. Yeah, or even with coffee, right? If you had used willpower to not have it because you just know it's not good for you would not have gotten this beautiful revelation, this lesson.
It's willpower that I've used for 40 years because I know that it can make me fight for breath if there's something in the chocolate, say a Cadbury's chocolate or a Nestle chocolate cripples me and I can't breathe because there's some oils in it. There's all sorts of lessons. So I was very particular about what I did. So to try and get the thing, but I am itchy. I've got earache, but I'm not sneezing and wheezing. But you know, I've controlled myself for 40 odd years to only have maybe 2 coffees a year and have a square of chocolate now and then, and it's willpower. And I said, but it's the craving's never gone away. So now I know it's about that, where I just said no to control, and I just ate until I thought, and as long as you ate your Christmas dinner, you were all right. You could eat all. Mum didn't bother you on Christmas dinner.
You had a free pass.
So I ate all the chocolate.
Wow.
And that's where it comes from. So I didn't know that.
I'm so thankful that you pursued this even further and you were able to figure out that there was that memory and that sense of love over Christmas. But you had to go through the lesson. You had to eat it. You had to put that willpower on the shelf.
Yeah.
Because in this case, willpower doesn't help us. So you had to put that on the shelf. You had to do the lesson. You had to go through that in order to understand that that's actually what you were after all, was that feeling of love and security and that you had in those moments at Christmas. Yeah. So now that you know that, and I hope that you've written some of this down. So because you've shared amazing revelations, you know, noticed. Oh, good.
I came in and was scribbling it all as we started because I'd just come in from picking up a piece of slate for the builders, and I said, I've just got to write this because I did it as I went along and I was driving. I'm like, oh, this is lovely. No, it's lovely. Keep eating because it's just nice. I've done the first bite, the second bite, and it wasn't getting there, and all of a sudden it just it did. But I pity my husband tonight because I'm sure I'll still be alive where tonight. I'm just still not used to it.
Well, you know what? Take that as a sign that you need to watch a longer movie that you don't normally have time for. That's what I do with my husband. When we have a little extra time or a little bit more, not ready for bed yet, we're like, okay, there's all these movies that I want to watch that I never have time for, or that closet that I want to clean that I never have time for. Use that as a way to be productive with your the fact that you can't sleep as well. And I hope that you don't feel too badly for the rest of the day. I'd like to say I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry.
No, it's
glad you did it.
I've done the Ultimate Spring program twice. I've done all the different ones, and I said, but this time it's about diving deeper into the psychology of it. And so if that's what you signed up for, you've got to face it, and it's tough at times. When you go into these things, it's tough, but actually it's like lancing the boil. Once you've got through that, it's such a relief.
Absolutely.
And it empowers you just by getting through it, doesn't it?
Sure does.
So
and now that now you can say, okay, it's not really about the food. It's about what the food made me feel emotionally. And so now we can think of other things. And this is what I'm going to ask you to do on that piece of paper. I want you to write down all of the emotions, if you haven't already, all of the emotions that those things allowed you to feel. And then I want you to think of other times in your life that are not food related that have also made you feel the same way.
Okay.
And make a list of those things, because that's going to be your toolkit. So when you're feeling like you need to connect to that emotional feeling again, you can go to that toolkit that doesn't have anything to do with chocolate or coffee. And you'll have a set of things, a whole list of things that can access that memory or access that feeling.
Thank you, Laura.
Brilliant.
I'm
so happy that you shared. Thank you so, so much, Jan. Appreciate you. All righty, who's
Alright.
next?
Let's go to Flavia.
Hey, Flavia, nice to see you again.
Hi again. Can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Oh,
Oh.
we lost you.
Now I can't. We did
Good,
earlier.
good.
Okay, good. You're unmuted now.
So interesting story about we talked a lot about stress and relating to an emotion and then eating from it. But I wrote on the chat, it was a really kind of surreal, weird experience to watch my husband go through an emotional state and his requests to comfort that emotion. And I just watched from outside the house, you know, when you look into a dollhouse. So I was watching from outside the house. I was doing the talk in my head. And then and I felt like I was Eric, where I said, "Are you sure this is a good choice?" You know, he goes, "I need bread, like Italian bread, the gooey stuff." And I just happened to know that I was going to go get avocados and my celery and an extra English cucumber for my Alka-Gizer. So I said, well, I'm going to stop by after my chiropractic appointment. I'll get you that. You know, I intentionally don't because he binges, but he was, you know, emotional work related stress, but really bad. And I picked up the Italian bread. I also picked up his favorite cookies because that's what he does, right? And he was like, "Oh, thanks." And I was, and inside the words were like, "You know, is this a good choice? Because it's really, you're not going to feel very good after." You know, I'm trying not to preach, but I was. It could have been me, but it isn't me because I don't eat white bread and stuff. And then I delicately cut it in half and put it in 2 different Glad bags, you know, gallon bags. And when I came back in the middle of the afternoon, half that loaf had disappeared.
Wow.
At night, and I went, ooh, you know, and I was like, I'm doing the talk. That's not going to be good. And then at night, he was up in the lazy boy chair with acid reflux because he'd overdone that. Yeah. And I just smiled and said, kind of knew that, you know. It's like, but it was interesting how he ate stress, right? And the only thing I could think of myself is when it's cold weather, I go to hot chocolate. And I've tried to find a really clean hot chocolate, which is hard, and it just tastes like really bitter hot chocolate. And so the other day I went to have some and I thought, well, I could have Swiss Miss or I could have the healthy one. And I had the healthy one and it was so bitter. I love chocolate, but it was so bitter that I was like, that wasn't worth it. Like it just wasn't worth it. But always cold, because I grew up in Northern Ontario, refers to hot chocolate, you know, the relation. But I am now seeing the conversations that are going on in my head. But it was very also interesting to watch somebody outside of me sabotage themselves. So that was what I wanted to share.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that
Yeah.
because it gives you a different perspective because sometimes we
Yeah.
see things in other people so much more clearly than we do ourselves, right?
Yeah.
It's our ego gets in the way. When it's ourselves, we've got this excuse and that excuse, and we work really hard to justify them,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
that's our ego, but it's easier to see it in other people. So even though it was his experience going through his dialogue and his food addictions and habits, you benefited from it, I'm sure,
I
on a
did.
deeper level.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's really powerful. And I recommend this to everyone to just start observing your family and your friends, not with judgment, of course, but
Right.
learning lesson for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
really, really powerful.
Yeah, so that's the point, was observing someone else. And if you're doing the dialogue and saying, ooh, that's not going to be good, or watching people eat French fries and greasy stuff or stuff like that, if you're doing that kind of dialogue, you're in the program. You are in the program because you're much more aware of everything going on around you. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful. And how do you think, Flavia, I'm curious, how do you think that will affect the way you look at yourself now?
I've already been doing it, and like even just like the pantry stuff, I already cleaned out the pantry. So it's not, it wasn't because of not temptation. It was like, "Oh, why did I go there with this?" So it was that conversation. But I'm an old timer of 5 years with WildFit, or 4 years with WildFit. And it's the talk has started happening again. I question things. I'm reading all my labels again, that kind of stuff. So that's how it's affecting me. And
Wonderful.
and Michelle said, don't be a perfectionist where you're like, I am the czar of food,
Right, right.
No, it's just being personally aware. I have a story, a really quick one. Is just I'm going out with friends tonight, and we're going to a show, Jersey Boy, and they were like, let's go eat before the show. And I was like, I'm going to eat beforehand because I'm not going to be able to eat where they're going to go, which was, of course, a pizza joint. And but then I thought, no, let me speak up. I would like to go eat at this gluten-free restaurant where I have healthy green choices and stuff. And I said, why don't we do that in advance? It's easier parking, everything else. And the friend who was organizing the event eventually gave in to me because it would be easier. Everything would be easier. And the food is, I'm allergic to black pepper and I can't always eat black pepper. Like the slightest bit will cause blistering. So I kind of actually forced myself onto the group to say, no, we're going to eat better this way, better than a pizza joint across from the theater, and I can't eat there. And she gave in, and she did make a comment yesterday when I met up with her. She goes, you took over. And I said, no, I just made a better choice. That's all I said to her. But I was
Love
really
it.
proud of myself because normally I would kind of agree and go with
Yeah.
them. Yeah.
As you should be proud. I'm
Yeah.
very proud of you.
Yeah.
That's a wonderful story.
Yeah.
And guess what? Your friends are still there. They still like you.
They know we're going to eat healthy.
Exactly. And what I love about that is not that you took over, but is you stood your ground and you
Yeah.
set your boundaries and you stuck to them.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's
And
really
it's okay. And it's okay.
it's okay.
I wasn't
Many of us
being
are
a
afraid to
bully.
do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. I was just recommending this or this. And I know they're all aware of their healthy choices. And they were just so poo-poo because it was the closest thing to a theater. And I go, well, why don't we just go out and eat earlier and eat at a better restaurant, healthy one. So
Wonderful. You
yeah.
are planting the seed in your friends' minds.
Yeah. And that's how it's this program.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how this program is reignited and reaffecting me. That's what it is.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Thank
you
you.
so much, Flavia.
You're
Nice
welcome.
to see you again.
All right, Joanne, let's go to you.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. Hi, Lori. Can you hear
Hi,
me?
Joanne.
Hello. So I just wanted to come online today just to share, I guess, where I am in the journey. I'm not a first timer in WildFit, but I have to say I'm a little bit surprised even by my emotions this time around. I graduated last November, and I have to tell you, I've been a stickler. I've adapted to the WildFit program. I'm so proud of myself, the progress and where I've been. But if I was being honest, closer towards the end of January, sliding right into this program in early February, something that started to change within me mentally. Like I was starting to lose this joy of what this program had brought me. Like, okay, I was starting like, yeah, I'm in, not to give anything away for those that I knew, but like, okay, I know what season I'm in. I know what I'm supposed to do. But there was this voice that was in the back of my mind where I'm like, yeah, but it's not anymore. You don't have spontaneity. You can't seem to do things. And I was like, maybe I need to get this reinforced, which is why I'm back here, right, in this program. And what I'm starting to recognize going through this 2-week, food freedom challenge and bringing back some of the things that I pretty much put, away in my food freedom line, I'm angry. I am so angry. I've been writing in my journal. I'll tell you what I'm really frustrated about is why do we even have to do this with, the food industry forcing us to not even know how we're poisoning ourselves as I'm stuffing the food in my body and I'm feeling the reactions. I am so upset. Like, how can we be living in all this muck that we can't even trust the things that we're supposed to be able to trust? And when will it be okay? And when is it acceptable? I'll give you examples. I religiously scan everything before I put something on my cart. I'm asking, the grocery stores I go to, spray that you're spraying on the vegetables, can you please tell me, like, are they chemicals in there? Can I trust that that there's no chemicals in there? Or am I potentially poisoning myself? It's getting to that extreme, right? And it's like, where do we go from here?
Yeah.
Can't sit in a restaurant because, and I've got apps telling me what restaurants are using seed oils versus what restaurants not using seed oils. And when I actually go ask the kitchen, or I'll put in in restaurants that I'm going to, like, okay, so we're cooking this without seed oils, right? You're using good oils. Well, no, it's canola for this, but if you order this fruit, then yeah, we cook that in butter. And it's like, I guess my biggest frustration is, how do we live healthy? How do we live wild fit, right?
Mhm.
And still integrate this into normal life, because we still have to live in one life. I don't know
Absolutely.
if I'm making sense here, or if I'm just venting.
No, you make
I'm just so upset. I'm so angry. I don't even know where to go with this emotion.
Yeah, Joanne, thank you. Thank you so much for your honesty. I really do appreciate that because you're absolutely right. It's frustrating. And thinking about what to eat constantly is flippin' exhausting. It's exhausting. It really is. And it's a shame that we do have to think about it so often. Um, One thing that I hear you saying, I can relate to that because I kind of got that way too. Like always, searching for the right restaurants and asking about the ingredients and there's that has been very helpful in my health journey. But at some point, and I'll be honest with you, at some point I dropped calling it Living Wild Fit. I don't call it that anymore. Because I was recognizing that by me saying, I'm living wild fit, I'm doing wild fit, I was labeling it as a way of eating instead of just saying, I'm eating the way my body deserves to be fed, and I found myself saying, I'm living wild fit, I'm doing wild fit. And, you know, I had to drop calling it that because it's not a diet, it's a way of life that we each have to find our own path. Because you're absolutely right. We still have to survive in today's environment, in today's world. And the food industry will not flip and stop. They won't stop. They won't stop. And we do have to be vigilant, but there's a way that you can do it that doesn't drive you crazy. Right. And so, what I want to remind you of is you go through this program again. I want you to focus on how you feel emotionally, like you have been. I want you to try to think of how you feel physically and just go back to the basics. Just start thinking, how did the oldest ancestors before farming, like how did our oldest ancestors eat? And I want you to try to mimic that in the real world as best as you can. And some things we're going to have to let go of. There's going to be some times where we aren't going to have control or we're not going to know everything. And we have to be able to let go of that. As a recovering type A, I like to control everything. I have to realize that for my own sanity, I do have to let some things go. And I can tell you one thing that really helped me as well is I went to Africa with Eric a couple years ago. God, is it a couple years ago now? Almost, I think a year and a half ago. And I went out foraging, and Nicole, you were with me. Harry, you were with me. Nicole and I literally went out and foraged with the women. We were digging our hands, right, Nicole? Digging our hands in the dirt, looking for potatoes. And I just spending the time with the Hadza tribe was incredible because I could see how simplistic their life was and how complex our life has become. Yes, they thought about food because for them it was their lifeline. It meant surviving.
Yeah.
But they didn't let it obsess over them. They smiled and laughed, and they played music with their instruments. They sang and chanted and talked with each other. I loved watching the little babies play with their older family members. It was an incredible experience. And for a culture that relied on food so much more than we do, because we have it everywhere. We don't have to think about it as much as possible. Like they have to think about it in the sense that they need it for survival. But yet it didn't detract from their quality of life.
Mhm.
And it was just such a powerful thing to see the simplicity that they lived with, that I brought that back with me, that sense of simplicity. And I let go of a lot of the, I still, trust me, I still keep my, my foundational tools,
Mhm.
but I've learned to loosen up a little bit and not be so worried about, which restaurant.
Connected and rule
Yeah.
structured.
Yeah, like I just know for me, I know what foods give me energy. So I just focus on what I knew for myself. I
Mhm.
focused on what foods were offered in restaurants that I knew I could eat that would make me feel good. So I just cut out a lot of the extra noise, but that's what the society wants us to do. It wants to create a lot of noise. It wants to create a lot of uncertainty. So we're hearing it from this influencer and that influencer and this restaurant and that.
Everything's poisoning you. Everything's poisoning you.
Yes. And we could drive ourselves crazy if we try to pay attention to all of it. So what we can do is just, for now, narrow your focus to what feels good for you. What do you know that Joanne can eat that makes you feel good about yourself, makes you feel good physically, gives you energy to do what you want to do throughout your day? And how can you make that simple in form? I don't mean like make it simply, like if you like certain ingredients, of course, add them, but how can you just make that a simpler way of living for yourself? Sometimes it means unfollowing people on social media for a while to block out that noise. But it's definitely it's a real situation, right? Has anybody else felt like that? Like you're just flipping exhausted from constantly worried about what you're going to eat. It is exhausting. It really is. And it's not really going to go away. Unfortunately, it's not going to go away, but we can only control how we respond to it. So if we notice that we're starting to get ourselves worked up, shut down the Instagram, shut down this, go back to the basic tools that you know. I hope that helps, and reach out to your community because you're not alone. 100% you're not alone. We're all here together and we're all trying to make our way through that noise.
It just is so stinking confusing. It's crazy, but thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Joanne. That was really, really powerful observation to share with us. And guys, we are at time. I'm so sorry that I didn't get to everyone, but I want to respect your time. So remember what we're doing this week. We're having more fruit. If you're having fruit, add a little bit more to your diet. If you've already been having fruit and you don't really have a big sugar craving, you don't have to add as much, but make sure you're getting some water, adding some good healthy vegetables, high quality meats and fats, and just start really noticing, is it a habit? Is it a craving, or is it real hunger? Okay. So thank you so much for being here, everyone. You guys are doing amazing, and we still have a few more days. So keep on keeping on. I can't wait to see what happens by Friday. So have a great week, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Thanks,
Bye.
everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Laura.
Thank you.
Today. Bye.
Bye.